This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 498 of the Late Round Podcast, one of many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. Last week it was quarterbacks, this week it's running backs, and unfortunately, unlike the quarterback class, this running back class kind of sucks. But there are some good players in it who should be taken at the top of your rookie drafts. It's not like every single running back in this class is underwhelming. To get more than just my perspective on this class, though, I sat down with my good friend Mike Wright of the award-winning Fantasy Footballers podcast. Mike explained why he thinks there's a clear-cut RB1 in this class, and he offers up plenty of takes on other running backs that you may be interested in taking during your rookie draft. You'll definitely walk away with some new knowledge from this interview. Now, before playing that interview, I wanted to remind you guys about OddsFire. Whether you're playing DFS or betting on sports, OddsFire is a key tool for your research. Shop for the best lines in each market and see which side is getting the most bets and money. OddsFire is the premier odds comparison experience across major bookmakers in the regulated U.S. market. Never settle, always get the best odds. Check out the experience for free now on NumberFire or at oddsfire.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now let's listen to Mike Wright talk some running backs. All right, Mike, last year's running back draft class ended up being pretty strong. We had some good backs out of that class, and it looked that way before the draft. But what's your assessment about this year's class in comparison to last year's?
Well, first, I'm finally on the show. I like he's just trying to blow past all that and get right into the fantasy football. You think of bringing me on the show and nonsense is not gonna happen? You're a fool.
Mike, this is a short 20 to 30 minute show, sometimes 10
longest
to 15 minutes.
episode ever, baby.
This is going to turn into the longest episode ever. Talk to me about this year's draft class, Mike.
All right. It's not very good. So I am fully in on, we have a quote big three at the running back position. For me, Najee is a tier above the other guys. I kind of, with Etienne and Javonte, I kind of go back and forth. I do lean more often that I'd rather have Javonte, but I am Najee Harris or bust, essentially, for this draft class. And there's just, we have a couple cool, production profile guys that may be able to do something if they're given an opportunity, but we have guys they're undersized. All the wide receivers are undersized. All the wide receivers are slot wide receivers. We're going to see, I think we'll see some reaches at the wide receiver position because there's just a couple big guys. But I'm off topic because we're the running back show. I forgot. I'm sorry.
We are the running back show. Yes. So you have it Najee, and then
yes.
Do you have it Javonte over Travis Etienne?
Yeah. I would prefer Javonte.
Okay.
He's more my style of player.
Okay, so if you could then point out one concern with each of those three backs. So again, we have a big three, and then there's a giant gap we both agree on until the rest of the class. But if there's one concern to point out for each of these guys, whether it's analytical, whether it's something you saw, what would those things be?
For Najee, it's it's not actually a concern, but if you're nitpicking on him, he is a Greek god. He is sculpted exactly how I would want my running back to be created,
yes,
and has all the abilities. But he lacks long speed. But whatever. So what? Who cares? Ezekiel Elliott kind of lacks long speed. He's still great for fantasy football. I don't need the ability to run an 80-yard touchdown. I'll take a 30-yard touchdown. I'll take a 40, and he'll be fine in that area. But if you're going to knock him, that's one place you can get at him. Etienne, is he big enough to really be a 3-down back? I know that draft Twitter we're all saying Etienne's going to be a first-round pick. Well, not all of us. I'm not actually in draft Twitter. I've been denied membership several times. But the mock drafters are putting Etienne as the first running back to be drafted. They're often putting him in the first round. And I'm over here saying, do coaches think he is big enough? Can he his pass block rating, like on PFF, is bad. And that was like a full confirmation of watching him play, going, man, I don't know if Etienne's really a good pass blocker. And yeah, I know we have studies out there of like that doesn't truly matter, but it matters. Like something I like about your show, which is hard to do. It's hard for me to find something I actually like about this podcast. But something I like is you bring up the human factors of a coach has to believe in the player to get them on the field. And we might say, well, pass blocking doesn't matter for running back because just throw him the ball. That's us. We're not the head coach. If the head coach is like, you suck at pass blocking, you screwed something up, you're not going to be a 3-down back. You're just going to be a 2-down guy, and we're going to have a pass-catching specialist. Now you are massively limiting who is supposed to be the first or a top 3 rookie pick at worst. Yep. So that would be my nitpick on ETN. And Javonte is more of he's had to play alongside Michael Carter, who is an NFL talent. He's going to be probably a day 2 pick. So you can't take that away from him. But at the same time, can Javonte hold up to the NFL, right? He's had someone to really spell him, like a full 50-50 spell for just college. Can he hold up when true grown men are the ones laying the lumber on him?
Yeah. So of these 3 backs then in a rookie draft, so let's say that you have the 102, 103, are you taking any of them? I'm assuming probably Najee Harris, given the fact that you seem to love Najee Harris, but are you taking the other 2 guys over Jamar Chase?
I need to see the landing spot first. I got to see that draft capital. I mean, Jamar Chase is locked. He's going to be a top 10 pick. But does we have a handful of actual primo landing spots for running back, like Arizona, Miami, Pittsburgh, Jets. Opportunity-wise, it's there. Maybe the team hopefully gets better. But there are a handful of spots where one of those 3 guys could land and instantly look like they're going to be a 3-down back. At least you can project that, hope for that, and I'm going to take the shot on that in my rookie drafts every single time. It may not work out, and that's just life. But if you get an actual 3-down back, you're set up for 4 years where Jamar Chase, he looks great, but we still have Chase could bust. I mean, Devontae Smith could bust. That's in their realm of outcomes because it's the NFL, and this just happens. So I'm copping out. I'm bailing out on that question, saying I can't answer that until I actually see, are they first-round picks, are they second-round picks, and which team has taken them. And hopefully the NFL does not destroy our dreams with any of those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, and realistically, the wide receiver position is just a harder position to prospect in general, right? Like, we know that draft capital is going to be very, very closely tied to talent and ability and fantasy production at the running back position at the next level.
Yep.
Whereas with wide receivers, I mean, teams get it wrong all the time at wide receiver because it's a lot more difficult of a position to evaluate. So I feel you. I do think that once we sort of get that draft capital, once we know where these running backs have officially landed, it's going to be a lot easier to place them ahead of or behind Jamar Chase.
And another thing, like where I'm still, I would consider myself still newer to Dynasty. I'm like 5 years in, but I know there's some people who have been just injecting this into their body for like 20 years or whatever.
Right.
Those people are wild. But a mistake I have made in rookie drafts, as far as ranking at the top, is automatically putting the wide receiver, a first-round wide receiver, at the 101. You're like, well, it's Dynasty. It's a wide receiver. If they're going to be around forever. And you're like, well, that it's recency bias, but N'Keal Harry, that did not work. Corey Davis, that did not work. Like, that was – if you took those guys at the 101, meanwhile, like Josh Jacobs, who's been very productive at the running back position, you are just absolutely kicking yourself for saying, no, I got to stick with the first-round wide receiver. Like, no, it's okay to take a second-round running back over a first-round wide receiver. Like, it can still be the optimal move.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing to think about, too, is who you can trade for within your Dynasty League, where it's going to be easier to get a higher end wide receiver because we can't assume that Jamar Chase is going to be the wide receiver one and have that like true, sincere, crazy edge at the wide receiver position, because we do know there's more depth at that position versus running back. And to get one of the running backs that would give you that edge, it's a little bit safer to go that direction as opposed to a guy like Chase. So after the big three running backs, lots and lots of question marks. One player who's often looked at as the number 4 in this class is Kenneth Gainwell, yet another running back out of Memphis.
Let's go, Memphis.
Are you in on some Kenny G?
Man, Kenneth G. We've been over this, JJ. We have a Kenny G.
I get it. Maybe the nickname Babytron should walk away now that he's not in Detroit.
Well, because he's now Ken YG, and there has now been another media company that has kind of tried to capture whatever. We won't get into that. What are we talking about?
We're talking about Kenneth G.
Kenneth G. Yes, and I think he wants to beat Kenneth. I think I had heard a report that
he
prefers Kenneth. Well, that remains to be seen.
Very formal of him.
Yes, I mean he's a fancy man, Kenneth Gainwell. I wish he was bigger. I really wish he was bigger. But what are the pros? Okay, making the case for Kenneth Gainwell. We have seen how good Antonio Gibson is. This Antonio Gibson is awesome, and he was awesome in college, and he was kept off of the field by Kenneth Gainwell. That's how good he was. Like, go watch some Kenneth Gainwell highlights. Are you feeling bad? You having a bad day? Throw Gainwell highlights on, and you're gonna perk up and go, "Holy crap, this guy is electric." But he did weigh in a little bit heavier at his pro day than I had thought. He was listed as like a 190 type of guy in college. We did see over 200 for the weigh-in, so it's better. But it's for a player at that size at the running back position, you are a complete outlier at that point of actually hitting on a really successful full-time career, not just being a passing specialist, not just being a gadget player. There are teams where he could go, but there's only one Alvin Kamara spot. Kamara's undersized, has a specific skill set, but if he goes to the Saints, it's gonna be great. I don't know if there's another Sean Payton out there who's willing to go all in on a sized back like Gainwell.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Gainwell will find a place and torpedo someone else's fantasy value.
More than likely.
Like he goes to like Jacksonville or something, and then all of a sudden James Robinson's value, the receiving volume isn't there. Yeah, I would agree though. It's more of like a James White role or something like that for Gainwell at the NFL level probably.
Hopefully a little bit more down the field than White.
So you like Javonte Williams. He shared a backfield, as we already noted, with Michael Carter. And Carter actually had more yards from scrimmage in 2020.
Yards, yes.
Than Javonte Williams did. So is there any love for Michael Carter?
I mean, I know that draft Twitter and Dynasty people were gushing for Michael Carter, and I was watching going, he looks like he's slow for a small running back. And then that checked out. He athletically tested, and he is slower for his size. Yes, he's definitely shifty. But when I was watching him, I'm going, this is a Devin Singletary type of a player, that's great for the NFL. Like, I think Singletary's a good player. He's never going to be good for your fantasy team. Part of it is his location. If you think that Gainwell is undersized, then Michael Carter is definitely undersized, and Carter is not Kenneth Gainwell in the receiving game. Where Gainwell you could play him as a wide receiver if all else fails. You can't do that with Carter. So he will be too specialized in my projections he's too small, too slow to transcend that low volume that he's going to see.
Yeah, analytically, his higher end comp for me was Gio Bernard, actually from the same college.
All right.
But I think that's the high end comp, and then the Devin Singletary one, I think from a play style standpoint, the size standpoint, and then the speed standpoint is perfect. I think that's what you're getting out of Carter, and I think anyone listening to this right now, you wouldn't be striving to get Devin Singletary in your rookie draft at this point.
Yeah,
so that's sort of where things are at with him.
Yeah, we've got Carter. I think he's still in our top 10 for our footballers rookie rankings, but like I've seen people putting Carter at 4 and 5, and I just that not for me.
Yeah. So there aren't a lot of bigger-bodied guys in this class, as we've talked about. But Trey Sermon, he's kind of interesting. He's 215 pounds. The problem with Sermon, though, is that we don't have this giant sample size of him being a workhorse, just sort of how he came about as a college player. So how are you viewing Sermon?
Sermon he's funny because he sort of checks all the boxes. I mean, his production profile is certainly not where you want it to be. It's underperforming in every single area, but big school, got on the big stage in the playoffs, had some good games there, was able to show off to NFL teams, and that does matter because everyone falls victims to the primetime games, even NFL coaches and NFL scouts and things. There are red flags of someone had to transfer essentially their 4th year in college to get a starting job. So like I'm saying, he checks all the checks certain boxes of size, school. He's just not exciting, and it's weird because he could easily end up being a 3rd-round pick in today's draft, or in this draft upcoming. But in any other draft class, we would not be getting really excited about Trey Sermon. We're very excited because we're talking about Kenneth Gainwell, like maybe he's the 4th best running back, and he's about 15 pounds too light.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, would you be shocked, though, if Trey Sermon, at the end of the draft, once we see draft capital, would you be shocked if he's the RB4 in this class consensus-wise?
Not at all.
Yeah, that's how I feel,
and that's
too.
Gross.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same. He feels like one of those players, and I think that you nailed it when you said that he had these big games in these big moments, and teams will look at that and see that and be excited about that. And then the draft capital piece might be there. And if the draft capital piece is there in this draft class, then it's very easy to see him rise to that consensus RB4 spot.
Yeah, he'll get that gamer tag.
Right.
Like, oh, he's a gamer. He's a winner.
Yes, exactly.
He shows up when it's big time.
Exactly. Another bigger body back, probably the biggest one in this class, maybe the biggest, Ramondre Stevenson. So he had a weird journey as well. How are you evaluating him?
He is very bizarre. Because in the games he played this year, his production was good. Like it's very green over here for the thresholds that I'm looking for, but it was only about half of the season, and the season was already crazy because of COVID in 2020. But you had all his suspension stuff. Then you have the fact that he didn't take his off season seriously, where he showed up in bad shape. Once he was working his way back into an optimal playing weight of being in shape to play, you're like, oh, this is a good back. But that's a massive red flag. And that will be a massive red flag for NFL teams, too, of how much do you love the game? How much are you willing to commit to the game? And if you can't keep yourself in shape during the offseason, you're gone. You will be gone very quickly. And someone will take your job. And so maybe in the right spot, maybe he gets his head on straight with an NFL contract, but we've seen just so many times of NFL teams taking the shot, hoping that the kid gets their head on straight, and unfortunately they don't, and they burn out.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about sort of the higher end running backs in this class, which there aren't many.
Yeah.
But if there's one sort of later round running back we haven't talked about, who you would consider to be your guy this year, who would that running back be?
I don't know that I'm willing to officially put my name on any of these players.
Very fair. Very fair.
But the player who I'm interested in, and this is far more tape, hashtag tape grinders, because the production profile is not strong. It's Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech, where and he also had another strange thing where he couldn't beat out like Puka Williams, who's like thimble-sized. I mean, Puka's a good player. I'm not trying to take that away from him. He's small. And Khalil Herbert, who is a prototypical size of the running back, had to transfer to Virginia Tech. And the things that I don't pretend to be a professional tape scout. There's a couple things that I look for when I look for the production profile first. I'm like you. I'm a data scraper, making sure that those things check out. But then I still have to watch, these other players who they're getting some buzz, and I'm looking for hands because I want a receiving back, and then I'm looking for balance. Balance is a super underrated skill. At least I don't think people talk about it enough. Of like, why was Marshawn Lynch so great? I mean, he was stronger than everybody, but he always had his feet underneath him. He could always stay upright. And Kareem Hunt, same thing. He can keep balanced. And that Javonte Williams reminds me very much of Kareem Hunt, which is why I like Javonte so much. He doesn't jump off the charts athletically, but he gives you enough, and you can't knock him over. He breaks tackles by staying on his feet. And Khalil Herbert to me was at least interesting in that area. Big enough school that maybe someone takes him in the third round. I think we're going to see a lot of fourth round running backs, which is like the worst when you're heading into your second round. You're like, I guess I'll take another fourth round running back here. I mean, hopefully we get some juice from this class, but it's not feeling great right now.
Yeah, I would agree. It's most definitely not feeling great. But Mike, it was a joy to have you on, and I'm sorry it's my fault that I didn't have you on sooner. But for those of you who aren't following Mike on Twitter, you can follow him at FFHitman, and you should check out the Fantasy Footballers podcast, which I'm sure almost all of you have already checked out. And while you're on Twitter, feel free to follow me at Late Round QB. And make sure to subscribe to the Late Round podcast, which you can find anywhere podcasts can be found. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll talk to you later in the week.